Good morning, Rabbi. Good morning, Chevra.
Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's three prakim Rambam, Hilchos, Malve, Veloiva. We're going to be learning chapters 10, 11, and 12, starting with Perek HaSidi. Perek HaSidi is really behemshech to the last chapter that we learned yesterday, and that will be about lending produce versus lending money, and how we have, at least midrabanan, challenges with ribis. Perek HaSidi has 6 halachas, and starting with halacha aleph, says the Rambam, just like we learned in the previous chapter, that when you are buying produce, as long as the market price has been fixed, as we learned in the Perek test, you are allowed to make the purchase by giving the money. And as we explained, what's the issue? Because it's possible that by the time the seller will give you the produce, the prices went up. Nevertheless, once the price was established, you are allowed to do it. Similarly, when you lend produce, you are allowed to lend it, even though the person is undertaking to repay you with produce, as long as there isn't a fixed time, as we'll explain in a moment, and al shar shabashuk, based on the market value, as the Rambam explains. If we are at the time of the year that the market price for this product is fixed, and a person, let's say, wants to borrow 10 so, and the agreement is that he'll be repaid, he's borrowing 10 to give back 10, and what's the chiddush? It's possible that when he repays 10 saw at that time, the 10 saw will be more valuable, will be more expensive. Not a problem. Because since there was already a fixed price, and the key here is that there is no kiviyas man, as long as the borrower was theoretically able to fulfill his obligation of returning, of paying back the debt as right away, he could have done it. And at that time, the price was the same. He would have bought. In other words, the key is that there is no, as long as there isn't a minimum term of the loan, then there is no issue with what we would call rabbinic ribis, which is, again, I borrowed something. When I borrowed produce, it was worth $1. Maybe when I pay back that product, maybe then it's going to be worth a little bit more. So the lender, one may argue, is getting back more than he gave. That would be like ribis. It's not a problem if, again, there's already the shad, and there is no kiviyos man. Halacha beis hoylem oisamin shalava. If the person who's taking the loan already has some of that product, it's very similar to what we learned in Perek test. Then hadeizamuta lil boistam beloy kiviyos man uperei astam, and the chiddush will be mamish like in Perek test. Since he already owns, even though he doesn't own that same amount, but he owns some of what he is borrowing, afapi shelo yotza hashar gevaldik, because we consider that which he has in his possession to already belong to the lender. That's the word. And if the price goes up, it went up when it already belonged to the lender. The key here again, since this whole thing is only midrabanan, we're very lenient. It's not that he needs to have fully that amount. Even if he's borrowing 1 saw, even if he owns 1 saw, and he's borrowing 10, or even only if he has 1 drop of oil or wine, and he's borrowing on it many jugs of wine or oil, we don't have that problem. Again, the chiddush here will be afapi shelo yotza hashar. But what you do need, both in halacha aleph and in halacha beis, is that the loan is only okay if there isn't a minimum amount of time, which means since when I'm borrowing it today we know what the price is. Theoretically, I could return it today. If I would return it today, I'm not giving back more than I got because the price today is the same price. That's why it's allowed. Now, and there isn't a fixed market price. Or another nuance, that neither you have to have both and the malva knowing the shad. They don't know, then that's the isur midrabanan. Hadeza asur lil voice sa'a b'sa'a. You get it, Shmuley? A pasha. In other words, if I'm borrowing a pound of flour, it's the issue, and I'm going to give you back a pound of flour. Well, if when I give you back the pound of flour, at that time the flour has more value, it's like ribis. Because we don't look at it being a loan of flour. We look at it as being a loan of money. Alama, I got the money, but even of flour. But if when I got it was worth 1, and when I give it back, it's worth 2 or 1.1, it's ribis. It's ribis midrabanan. It's not ribis ktsutza. Again, and the solution will be either you have the product or there's already a market established price. And 2, which is very important, is that there isn't a minimum amount of time. It's not just about any other product. Now that's something else. In other words, if I borrow something, like I should have said it yesterday in Shabbos, the simpler solution. I need to have a flour. I need to have a pound of flour. No problem. How much is flour worth today? Even if there isn't a market value, if we agree, the lender and the borrower, okay, we're going to give this the value of $1, and I owe you $1. Nakuda. I can give you back $1 in a green cash. I can give you back $1 in whatever the dollar would buy a flour when I'm giving it back. Also, there's no problem. When I borrow something, it doesn't have to be dollars. I can borrow things. If we say what I am borrowing is $10, even though you loan me whatever the item is, you also circumvent. There's no issue. What are you laughing, Zelik?
So if you lend somebody 1 pound of flour, and you say, all I want back is 1 pound of flour, but the value had gone up when he returns it, is that considered ribis?
Yes. But one second. Is that like 1 second? But 1 second. If when I borrowed the flour, there was then an established price, and if the loan had no minimum term means that prior to 30 days, I can't even repay it. If I can repay it on the day that I borrow it, then it is okay. That's a heter, because since theoretically the borrower could have returned it today we know the price. Even if I opted to return it later when the price is more expensive, we are still good. But you should know that many loans have a minimum term. I know today when you borrow money from the bank, in many loans, even if you want to pay back early, you pay a penalty. You understand? Now, now, what happens if they did that loan be'isr? They made a minimum term. Well, what happens if actually the prices went down? Then there's no problem. If the prices go down, even though you should not have borrowed it with those terms, but if the prices goes down, there's no ribis. The opposite of ribis. But the in other words, if the prices went up and you made such a loan, you're not allowed to return sub. You cannot return. You have to then go back. How much was it worth then? And only give back that equivalent value today in the day that you're giving back the product. Also, which is that one of the hetedim, or shahoya shar kavua bashuk, hadesa also lil voice paydas bepaydas adzman kavua. No, it's if there is a specific date in which we're saying that the loan can only be returned as of 30 days. Then it's always going to be asur. Why is that? Because it resembles ribis. Because if the prices go up, don't do that. There has to be a clear understanding that you can pay it back whenever you want, meaning even now. So if it's no minimum time, that's always needed. And the other condition is either there's a shar, or you have of that product, that's going to be the head. Or the third, if you make it into a money. If you make it into a money, it's not an issue. It's not called sabasa. I'm not getting a pound to give back a pound. I'm getting a pound which is worth $10, and I'm going to give you back $10 worth of flour however much flour that is on the day, I give it back. That's Machlal, not a problem. Halacha Gimel. Lo yomer adam lechaveiroi halveini koir chitim vani machze locha koir lagoiden. In other words, koir lagoiden means it's mamish like me saying there's a minimum amount of time. Because the goiden, just the way it works, we're not farmers. There was a time to make the goiden. If I'm going to give you back a koir during the times of the goiden, even that means until then not, that's called kniyos man. But what you could say is, I want to borrow the sa'a or the koir until when my son will come. That's not called kniyos man, because maybe his son will come today, right? Or until when I find the key, which is also the most common thing. It could be I even have the flour. I lost the key to my cabinet. So I'm asking you, until when I find the key, lend me. It could be I'll find the key today. I could make a stipulation, but as long as that stipulation might be met, hayoim, that means it's not a minimum term loan, which will make it permissible if either there's the shar or if I have of that product. Halacha dal. Lova peiras atzman kavua, which he should not have done, like we mentioned, but then im huzlu, I don't know why the Rambam seems to be repeating something that he wrote in Halacha Gimel. No, it's even if the loan was made be'isur, midrabanan of sabasa, but that's if the isur is only because the prices might go up. If they actually went down, then he's allowed to give him back sabasa, because there's no ribis. It's only the mukru, then maybe it's mamash even a mistake. Guys, look at these words, and it mamash looks like what Rambam wrote in Halacha Gimel again. In Halacha Beis, it looks like a repetition of the end of Halacha Beis. Okay, right. Halacha. So here we go, guys. One of the agreements that people made with sharecroppers, Yakir, the sharecropper means I own the land. Let's say you're going to do the work, and there's an agreement of how we will split the profit. Okay? Now, when we're speaking about working land, one of the things we're speaking about is seeding it. Who is the one that provides the seeds? If the balabas, the owner of the land, tells the others, I'm going to be laying out a pound of seeds that you're going to plant, and then when there is going to be profit at the end of the season, aside of our division that you're getting half, I'm getting half, you're going to give me back the pound of seeds. Okay, so here again, the issue isn't that sabasa? If I'm lending you a pound of seeds and I'm getting back a pound, that if the prices then went up, and I'm for sure going to be getting it back, kaviyus man, I'm getting it back after you planted it, after it grew. So you would think that's also. So the Rambam says it is mutter. A person is allowed to lend to a sharecropper, chitim v'chitim l'zera, which is mamash a chiddush. Bein koidim sheyered haaretz l'sada, bein achas sheyared. Makes no difference when he made that stipulation. Now, why would that even make a difference? I'll tell you why. Because a loan is prohibited. A sale is mutter. Or when we make an agreement, think about it like this. When I tell an artist, forget about me lending a pound of wheat. Forget about that. If I tell a person, you're working in my field, and as rent, you're paying me, that's called a choicher. Remember, we learned choicher, it was last Shabbos, we didn't learn it during the week. You pay me back a pound of wheat. That's not called ribis. I'm giving you my land, and in return, you're paying rent. So if the agreement is made when the artist goes into the field, it's less problematic, because it's easier to interpret that pound back not as a repayment of a loan, but as a payment of rent. The Rambam is adding, even if I make this agreement after the artist went into the field, the rent was already paid by me getting a percent. I'm giving you my land, so I'm going to get 50% of the profits, a third of the profits. It doesn't matter the percent. Even then, you are allowed to add it. You are allowed to add it, because we will always view it as the rental agreement, and we never will learn it, we'll never look at it as a loan. That it's allowed only where the artist is normally the one that brings the seed. And therefore, how does that affect it? So Gavaldik Kehetis. Yad Bala Karka L'Salka Kozman Shalinosan. Since the artist has to be the one providing, and therefore, theoretically, if he doesn't, the balabas can let him go. And since the balabas doesn't let him go, it's as if they're making a new agreement. So that's why we said that even if he's giving him that chitim bechitim lezera la'achar sheyarad, it's viewed as if they're making a new agreement today, because the artist is not coming through with his responsibility. So then only imadayin loyarad ha'aris, then hadeza mutal halvoise chitim bechitim, because hadayin yesh lo lesalkoi, which means that then we don't view it as a loan. We view it as part of the rental agreement. But, Yakir, if the guy already made the agreement, I'm giving you the land, you're doing the work, the agreement is that I'm getting half of the profits. Once that agreement was made, if later the owner says, I will give you the seeds, but that seeds you have to give back to me prior to making the division. Well, that's a loan of sub. And that's a zman kavua. That's a zman kavua. And meaning that it's part of the agreement, we don't view it as a loan, we view it as part of the rental agreement. The agreement was already made. And now, what you could do is, Malveyu Stam means, you cannot say, I'm giving you a pound for you to seed it, because if I'm giving you something for you to plant, it means that I'm saying that until when it grows later, you don't have to give it back. That's called your kavei azman. If I give it to you and I don't say what this is for, even though we both know that it's going to be for you to plant, but that still means that it's not for seeding. That's not what we said, which means that the borrower, the artist, theoretically, if he gets his own zurayim, he can give this back today. As long as you can give it back today, and there is either a market price or he owns of that same type, then it's going to be mutter. Final halacha. Someone is owed money. This is the lender. Someone to whom money is owed. And the lender tells the borrower, please give me back my money, but I'm telling you why I want the money today. I need to buy that item. I need to buy wheat. So the borrower tells the lender, say va'asei oisam olai kishar shel achshav v'yeh locha etzli chitim b'halva'am. Go out, establish the money that I owe you as a debt of wheat. Yakir, the halt's cup. So Pasha, you owe me $100. And I'm saying, can you please give me, I want to buy wheat. Because today I think the price is cheap. I have cash, I'll buy the cheap price. The borrower doesn't have the money to pay back. So he tells the lender to save it. Today, what is $100 worth of wheat? Let's say it's worth £1. I owe you a pound of wheat. Zorg sich nicht. I owe you a pound of wheat. What is he trying to tell the lender? Who cares if I don't give you this today? I'm going to give you a pound of wheat, even though it could be that later the pound of wheat will cost more money. Okay. If the borrower actually owns that wheat, but here it has to be the full amount, mutter, meaning even though it's possible that when the borrower actually gives it to the lender, that wheat is worth more than $100. It's no problem. Why is it not a problem? Because if he transformed the money debt into a wheat debt and the borrower already has the wheat, we view this wheat to already belong to the lender. It's just sitting in the house of the borrower. And therefore, if the price of the wheat went up, the lender, that's the lender's benefit. The lender's wheat went up. The borrower is not giving him back more than $100. The $100 is just sitting in the borrower's house. The fact that now the price went up and this same wheat is worth $110, yay to the lender. But the borrower is not giving him back more money. It was already given back. But Either is a market value, which is the whole thing we learned in Pedic Test, guys. That was the last chapter yesterday. And we said once there is an established market price, we don't even need for him to own it, any of it. That's only Ella bin Noisim Moisim Liktas Behem. The Chachamim only allowed that was a heter when you're giving money to buy produce. That was the whole Pedic Test. Once you are a farmer, I want to buy something. It was common for people to pay the farmers early in the season because they knew that the farmers needed the money. The guys didn't even need the produce yet. They just wanted to have that cheaper price. That is when they find we follow the heter as we learned yesterday. If there was a loan for money, not buying, I made a real loan. You lent, here's $100. I want back $100, and now you want to transform the money into a produce that already ushered actually loy paid is.
I want to ask, but I don't know how to put the question. So, how is Shar Ashuk notify the fact that I need to have a little bit of the whatever heating mouth, whatever it is?
No, the Shar Ashuk all means is that we know how much it's worth today. It could be procured today, and as long as it could be repaid today, so then there is no ribis. I don't know. You might return it later. Doesn't matter. Since you could have returned it today, it's as if it's not a ribis loan. Let's go weiter. And also same case, the debt was transformed into a debt of wheat, which they should not have done, but they did that. And I'm sorry, they were allowed to do it because the loiva had wheat, so they did it beheter. Let's go weiter. It means invited, and the lender goes to the borrower and he tells him, "Ten lichitai, please give me my wheat. I need it because I want to buy wine." Here again, the borrower is stalling. The borrower is telling the lender, "Listen, here again, every time the borrower transforms the product debt into another product debt, it's only kosher if the loiva has that new item. Im yesh leyayin eres muter, venas alvas etz leyayin, ve'im leyayin os. Hadei shelo hoyoloi. And va'avar ve'echzer alva peres, if they violated this, and he did not have the wine in this case, and then a month later he gave him back wine, even though the borrower acquired himself wine, but he acquired it not at the time that he transformed the wheat debt into a wine debt. He doesn't have to give him that paytas. And this is like we learned yesterday, just to chazer one very important concept, that the big difference between ribis ktsutza and avak ribis, which is biblical and rabbinical, is that the ribis ktsutza is yoitza b'dayan. We don't allow, we always reverse it. Avak ribis, prior to it being paid, they don't pay it. Eina yoitza b'dayan. Post being paid, don't return it. This is prior to it being paid. But since this is considered avak ribis, prior to the borrower giving it to the lender, the Beis Din tells him, don't give it. So in a chanami, so that agreement falls to the sides. And why does he go back, guys? He goes back to the original money. It's a moedadik. You don't go back to the wheat. Once the lender says, I want wine, and the borrower says, okay, I'll give you that in wine. If he was not allowed to make that statement, we go back to the original loan. It was $100, give him back $100. And with this, my friends, we concluded the sugya of ribis, which was really phenomenal. So it was really 2 days, 7 chapters. And now we're starting with today's second chapter. It's a new topic, guys. We're beginning with to point out the big difference between a loan that's documented versus a loan that's not documented. That will be a new topic, and undo with ribis. Perek Achad Asar, 11th chapter, has 11 halachas, starting with halacha aleph. Says the Rambam, Hamal ve'es chavere b'fnei Edom. If you loaned someone money and you did it in front of Edom, and by the way, we learned, remember, that really you have to do that minimally in front of Edom because of lifnei iver l'sit and michshel. Ideally, the Rambam writes every loan should be documented, but you did the right thing. Or if a person tells witnesses, Hevu olai edim, be my witness. What? Now we're going to learn soon in Hilchas Eidos exactly how such a statement needs to be made for it to be effective. But we're speaking about that all of the conditions were met. In other words, if I borrowed money, I could, not in front of Eidim, I can make that into a debt that is done in front of Eidim by making the statement in the right way. Hevu olai Eidim. The Eidim didn't see that you loan me money, but the Eidim are seeing me being moida, that I'm chayiv to you money. Guys, all of these nuance of differences, we're going to learn on Hilchas Eidos, and these are very important halachas. Not every admission, even in front of Eidim, are significant, but you have to know when you made it significantly. You know what the Rambam says? Even though it's done in front of Eidim, even if the person is telling Eidim, know that I owe money, all of that is taka a debt in front of Eidim, which is great, because like this, the borrower is not even tempted to deny that he owes the money. We know he owes the money. He can claim that he paid it back. I know that. But at least the halva is witnessed. It's called a milva al peh. And it's not called a milva b'shtar. And therefore, beginning with one thing, before we get to the lakuchas, any loan that's not documented does not need to be paid back in front of witnesses. See, if a loan that was given in front of witnesses would have needed to be paid back in front of witnesses, then the borrower would never be able to claim, I paid back. The lender would tell him, you paid back, where are the Eidim? Just like when I gave it to you, Be'edim, if you have to give it back to me in Eidim, then claiming Parati would be impossible unless he brings Eidim. But that's not the din. The din is that when the money was loaned, it's ideal to have Eidim. And even though there were Eidim, or he made Atam Eidai, he doesn't have to pay back in front of Eidim. And therefore, he has the right to say Parati. It's important for you to know that. Now, Midrabanan, anytime there's a Kaif and Hakol, you have to make a Shua Sesses, as we'll learn. But beside it, in Toim Venitan. But Venish Behesus Venitan. Now, that's another important thing. In other words, when the lender wants to make sure that the borrower doesn't come later to say Parati, what's the solution? Document it. That's the only solution. Because if I document that I loaned you money and I have the document, if you claim you paid back, I'm going to stay shtar chabiyadi, my boy. If it would have been emes, either I gave you a receipt, or the best thing is you would have demanded the borrower by payment to get the document to rip it up. So remember that. If you lend money and you don't want for that person to be able to say, b'sheket, paraiti, document it. Because any milva bal peh never needs to be repaid in front of Eidim. So he always has the right to say parati. Now, if he says, loy hilvesi, he's a shakra. Because we have Eidim. I get that. But he can say, I borrowed and I paid back. That's the first nakuda. If it's a documented loan, tzarech lefarei be'edim. Pashit. And therefore, in Tanva Amma Parati Shtar Zeh, Eino Neman. That's the default. Elo Emrim Loi, Havei Eidim. Now 1 second. There's a third option. I said a receipt, ripping up the document. It's shaykh for a person to pay back the money. Imagine the borrower sees the lender and he tells the lender, listen here, David, I know me. I'm very bad with cash flow. Take the money back now because tomorrow I'm not going to have it. But give me a receipt. The lender says I don't have paper. Give me the document. I don't have the document. The borrower knows, many times I know, if I don't pay back today, tomorrow I'm not going to have enough money to pay back. So the other way, I can get Eidim. And in front of Eidim, I tell them, listen, there's a documented loan. I want to pay back. He doesn't have a shoiver. Shoiver means a receipt. He doesn't have the shtar. At least this is in repayment. If I have those Eidim and they come to Beis Din, I'm going to be good also. That's what you can do. The fikach. Again, these are dinim that we're going to learn in Hilchos Eidos. Such a statement never allows for the Eidim to document that hoida'ah, because we're not allowed to make a milva al peh into a milva bishtar without the consent. You understand? There has to be consent over here, especially of who needs to consent, kid? Who loses from the document? The borrower. Because the borrower has the biggest chus when it's only al peh. The borrower can claim paraiti. So just because the borrower is telling Edom, Hevu alai Edom to ani chayiv, it doesn't mean that he consented to document it. You don't give the document to the malva. Not unless the borrower, who's the one that loses by it being documented, if he says, look how clear. Write it, sign it, and give it. And furthermore, says the Rambam, even if the borrower made such a declaration, these people, they take a write it and sign it, but prior to giving it to the lender, they ask him again. They want to know whether he still is fine with it. They have to ask the borrower, and if he says, no, I want you to give it to the lender, only then, now,
when they do that, does it transfer over from Milva Peh to a Milva Bishtar? Is that what?
Yes, it does, Danny. And that will also have an effect on his ability to be goiver from the Lakuchais, as we'll see soon. But it's beautiful. The Rambam said that, as you ask, I remember by me. The difference is Lakuchais. No, the Rambam begins, it has to do with whether you can say Parati. That's the Iker. Now, there's one thing. There's the Loiva just saying, Hevu alai Edom sha'ani chayiv, doesn't mean he wants you to write it. But then there's the Loiva making a kinyan, the borrower making a kinyan. Yakir, you loaned me money a year ago. Doesn't matter when. There's no Edom. I'm calling Edom and I want the Edom to see that I'm making a kinyan that I owe you. Now that kinyan was not necessary because my verbal hoida'ah would have been enough. So we understand that why am I making a kinyan? For it to be documented. That's the meaning. If you made a kinyan, then I don't from the Iceland. Because Shestam Kinyan Lichsiva Oimed, and not only can they write it, but even after they wrote it, they don't have to ask him again, are you fine? Not for the writing, not for the giving. Halacha base. The Loiva wrote a document. The Loiva wrote a document. And the Heged by Edom, and people signed on it, and he gave the document to the Malva. Gewaldig. Hareza star kosher. Number 2, in cause of star, if the borrower writes a document, I owe you money, but he gives the document to the Malva in front of Edom Mesira. That's also called a Milva B'Shtar. Providing it's when you have Edom signing the document, later you're going to ask the Edom more details that will circumvent the guy claiming Mezuyah. Whenever there are no Edom signed on it prior to the Mesira, you have to look into that part. The Yikru Oiso Edom Shenisu B'Fneim, and another thing, that it should be read by the Edom in front of whom you're giving the document. Whoever was a witness, let's say today in a Beis Din, when they give a get, no, it's just because Edom Mesira, they have to know what's being given over. So there's an obligation by all Edom Mesira. You read the document in front of the Edom. So the Edom know what's happening. Not just, I gave it over in front of the Edom. How do you know what was given over? Maybe there was something else written there. Now, wow. So there's going to be 2 documents. Now, why don't they sign on that document? I don't know. But some of the Goinim held that if all you have is Edom Mesira, make another shtar, it's a separate shtar, in where the Edom document that Bifonenu Nimsuru, this guy to that guy, a document that we read, it's crazy, that says on it alone. Halacha Gimel. I want to tell you a detail. Why is that even needed? So really, Danny mentioned before, because there's another din of Lakuchais. We'll explain that in a moment. But the only reason why a Milva Bishtar is powerful enough to put such a lien on the property of the borrower, that even if the borrower, after he borrowed the money, sold land, now when he says, I can't repay it, the lender collects that land, that's because the person who bought the property knew of the loan because there is a pirsum. So the reason why the Goinim want to have such a thing is because a document that doesn't have Edom on it, they held doesn't have enough pirsum for people to claim later that the buyer should have done due diligence. He couldn't have done due diligence. So if you write a new document saying that Befonenu Nimsuru, that makes the pirsum needed. That's all about the buyer not being, so to say, cheated like, what's my fault that the guy owed money? The answer is because you should have known about it.
To add a footnote in the original document of the Azhar, that he was the Fnei to write a whole new.
Yakir is mentioning Avada, you can write a footnote on that document. There's no question about it. Chiddush here is that even if you're writing nothing on the shtar, what's the shtar is the shtar without Edom. That's the shtar. To be mefarsim, you make another document. Okay, Allah. Now, if there's just a note, IOU, the lender pulls out a document, all it says, of the borrower, that the borrower is chayiv, but there's no Edom, no Eid Chsima, obviously there's no Eid Mesira. This is amazing. You know why it's a milva? I'll tell you why, guys. Because there is no pirsum. We're not saying that the guy cannot collect. He can collect. The other guy can say parati. That's another issue. But the main thing is that once it's documented, we're getting into that. That puts a lien on the property of the borrower. And even if someone bought the property, the buyer will lose it by the lender. That's only because there was a pirsum. When I write, I owe you $100, no one knows about it. So makes sense. And now since it has a din of milva balpeh, let's go back to the halacha. And therefore, as we'll learn in a moment, it's not so simple this, and neither from the lekuchais. As we keep on mentioning, lekuchais means that if after someone owes money, after the borrower borrowed the money, during the time of the borrowing of the money, he owned land. If post the chiyuv, he sold the land to lekuchais. If when the loan is being collected, the borrower says ainli, even though normally a loan should be collected from a taltalin. That's ideal. But if the guy has no metaltalin, then we yoid it l'nechasav. And if the guy doesn't have ben choyden, if he has lekuchais, they're going to get it from the lekuchais. So milva balpeh can never be collected from lekuchais. Allah chadal. Kol milva shebishtar, goyven even from the yarshim. And we're speaking even about whether minors or not. We'll get to that in the next chapter. But generally, you collect it from the Yarshim. There's a chiddush here. The Yarshim did not borrow the money. So why are they chayiv to pay? They're not chayiv to pay. If it was a milva bishtar, which makes it leaned on the property belongs to the borrower. Even after the borrower passes away, if that is what happened, the property that he bequeathed to his children have a lien on it already. So that's why that if it would be documented, you collect it from the land. But if it was not liened on the property, and as we'll explain more details. However, and this is a very, we have to just say, there are certain conditions that have to be met. It's not always. They could be collected from the Yodesh, but never the Eino Goyim and Alakuchas, because since the loan has no coil, so the buyer who bought the land was innocent. He did not know he's taking a risk. We cannot make him lose. Since coil yeshlo, so here we say that the likeach chifset alatzmoi. What do you mean you bought land from someone who owes money? Because the halacha is shekol nichse haloiva tachas shibud hamalva midin toida. Gewaldig. Now let me just add a nuance. The nichse haloiva means land. Just to know, nechasa means land over here. The metaltalin of the loiva are not meshuba to the loan. It's very important. Midin toida. Which is why if a borrower owns no land, even though he owes money, if he passes away, midin toida, the lender cannot collect because the Yisraelim say we never borrowed the money. You were yoirish metaltalin from your father who borrowed. Just to know, metaltalin minatoida are not meshubad. Land is meshubad. Halacha. And v'yotzos mitachas yidei alikeyach. In other words, the creditor of a seller, the creditor of the seller of the borrower takes that land. Afal pi she'ein sham shtar biyad loikeyach. When it comes to a sale, when it comes to a loan, if the loan is not documented, no one is going to know that I borrowed the money. What happens, similar, that I sell land. When I sell land, everyone knows when it comes to mechiras hakarka that the land was mine and now you bought it. Because the way people sell land to make more money is you put it on the market. Here, like some people, they buy it off market, but they tell the guy, I'll pay you a lot of money for it. Normally, it's advantageous for a seller of land to be mefarsim selling the land, because the more people will know about it, you're hoping there'll be a bidding war and you're going to end up getting more money. So by default, any sale of land is mefursam. And that's very important. Loans don't have a coil if they're not documented. Selling of land don't need a document. And it's important to know about that, about a selling of land, because if I have a loan, which is mefursam, right, and I sell the land, it's going to be known that I sold the land, with all of the consequences that will happen because of it. Halacha vav. Ein ha'alva shal peh, nigbeis min hayorshim, even though we said before you could, but the Rambam here is writing the details. Ela be'echad mishloisha devarim elu. You have to have the following three. Well, one of the following three. Number one, b'shahachayav ba moide v'tziva b'chol yoy sheyesh lo plani olav chayvadayim. So you have a person, the borrower who's ill, who's telling his heirs, Chevra, I owe someone money. That is megala that he did not pay it back. Or if the loan was for a minimum amount of time, and the borrower passed away within that time, and because of the chazaka, that's Bava Basra Dafei, so we presume it was not paid. Or another thing, could be that this man was up. This guy was not Maida. But let's say it came to a point in a Dintaida that Beis Din put him in a Chedim because he's not paying back the loan. And he passed away while he was still in Chedim. We know that if he would have paid back the loan, he right away would have gotten the Chedim removed. Gewaldig. In other words, even though we know for sure that a loan took place, you can never collect from the Yarshim. Because we say, maybe he paid back. Based on the rule. That we just learned that even a ksav yad in itself is still a milva peh without Eidim. As we just explained. Now, if he doesn't have metaltalin, but he has land, even though, guys, halva should be paid back with money or with metaltalin. Step number one. If he doesn't have that, then you go to the karka. We don't let this guy pay back with land so quick. When people lend money, they don't want land back. Could be, you loan me money, I'm the big chacham. I want to get rid of some land. I'm going to give all my money to someone else. The chanish can geld, or take the land. So basically has to look into that. Then, once they know that he doesn't have money that he gave to someone else. Who has to sell it, guys? The borrower. Basically doesn't have to bother themselves. They still make such a statement. Anyone knows of, if anyone actually is holding onto the metaltalin and he doesn't bring it, should be put in chayim. As we will learn, that will be paid a kutes. That's what you do if the guy doesn't have metaltalin. That we do the above. This man should have framed in aloyva atzmai. Avol habali parim in ayoyreish. Bein katan ubein gadol. They never collect from metaltalin. If the father gave it to someone else, it didn't even go into the domain of the Yarshim. Never collected from a metaltalin. Because metaltalin einam tachas shibutz balchoiv by the Torah law. And therefore, just to make it clear, since metaltalin are not meshubah to the choiv, The Yoresh is not mechuyev. It's a mitzvah. He's not mechuyev to pay the debts of his father.
So you from the nechasim and from the karka.
The karka, he's mechuyev because there's a lien on the karka. That's the whole word. Every loan should be collected from a metaltalin. If not, it goes to the karka. Now, therefore, if there's no metaltalin, you collect it from the karka, as we'll see. If there's no karka, there's no chiyuv. Even though there's no chiyuv, halacha 8, mitzvah la yisoyim li parachay v'aviyam and a metaltalin sheniyah.
But what if he, like in halacha 5, he's dying and he's telling, I have a such and such chov, then the auction is supposed to pay from the metaltalin.
There's a mitzvah for them to pay from metaltalin. Always, even if the Yarshim know there's a debt, that's halacha ches. There's a big difference between a mitzvah. Mitzvah means I'm not mechuyev. The father borrowed the money. So again, since midin toida, the debt is leaned on the karka. The karka is, so to say, belonging to the lender. There's a chiyuv. If there's no karka and only metaltalin, since midin toida, a debt is not leaned on metaltalin, you can't say that they're mechuyev. It's a chefza. There's a mitzvah on the gavra.
So here's my question. So, okay, it's clear.
Mitzvah l'yisrael l'frei chayvaviyam and avtal sheniyach. But if he doesn't want to give it, ain't koyfen oisoi. But im tafas mal chayv machayim. Smart guy. The lender sees the borrower on a deathbed. He knows this guy has no karka. If he seizes something, and then afterwards he's telling the mason, he never gave it back to me. I went into his house and I took that clock. He owes me $1,000. I already have the clock in my possession. Beis Din will allow for him to collect from what he took. Goyva mehen, to'an, and if he claims mechayim, that has to be mechayim. Mechayim tofasti, and the yoydish toin achamisa tofas, and it's now in the hand of the creditor. Again, how much mechaber all about ala yoydish laviraya, oi meaning yeshava hamalve shekach lekach ulchayev loy. He has to make that oath. That's machlal a rule. I want you to know like this: whenever you are collecting from someone who's not there because the guy passed away, you always have to take an oath that he owes you the money. So that oath has to be taken. But now that you already have a metaltalin and you're saying that you were tafas mechayim, you're going from it. And the if the guy owes me $1,000 and the piece of whatever that I took is only 800, I only get 800. But the koil b'shvuah, I have to add now on my oath shemachayim tapas. It's the shvuah that money is owed is always needed. It's always needed. That's the rule. What happens if he didn't see something that has intrinsic value, but it only has it's a star? That's still not enough. The imloy heavy yachzer liyarshin. The pnei she'enam toyin liknois gufam elo l'rayisha bahem. And that's something that we learned above. When it comes about documents, even when you sell such a document, remember you have to have another document. The shtar itself doesn't have intrinsic value, so you can't say that the lender is a muhsik. He's muhsik in nothing. He's muhsik only in a ray. So all of lahaviraya. If you want to do me a favor, if you want to shut off the air conditioning, it's very cold in here. I think the air is on over there. Halacha 9. Now, the other direction, guys. Others owed the father money in that direction. And now the Yisoimim are collecting that other's land. The borrowers. Yesh lebal choiv shel aviyam. Listen to what's happening. Yesh lebal choiv shel aviyam lachsav lig b'soisem ahem. Now this is good. Sharei karkazu shel aviyam hu. Amazing. So Nachamal Yakir. Someone lent money to Yaakov. We are saying that when Yaakov passes away, if Yaakov left no karka, even though he left metaltal, even though there's a mitzvah on Reuven to pay back, you can't chop it. 1 second. Yaakov passed away without karka. There was someone that owed money to Yaakov. He didn't pay him. After Yaakov passed away, Reuven discovered such a debt. He went to that guy. That guy didn't have metaltalin. If you don't have metaltalin, That guy, it was a documented loan, Meshuba to the karka. So Reuven, the kid, collected land. What is it chap now? Why was he able to collect the land? Because someone owed money to Reuven, which was lien to the land. We view now this land to always have belonged to Yaakov. Now it chaps that when Yaakov passed away, Yaakov owned land. So now Reuven has to give that land to the lender of his father. Well, when he passed away, he had no karka. So the guy couldn't collect it. Mitzvah, but he cannot mechuyev. If now the orphans collect the land of people who owe money to the father, now the Baal Chayv gets to collect of it. Reuven shemachas, which is normal. Halka. Reuven is accepting here responsibility. Okay. Now, another detail. Shimon didn't pay immediately. Sometimes, like here in America, you don't pay. What did Shimon say? Shimon told Reuven, no, the sale is now. I owe you the money. The money becomes a loan. The way people buy real estate here. Now, Reuven, ba'achriyusa means, Reuven is telling Shimon, if someone is going to chop the land away from you, like if I owe money, I'll give you back the money. In the Bible, Shimon didn't even give him money yet. Shimon owes him the money. And now Meis Reuven. So look what's going on over here. So mitzad echad, Shimon owes money to who? To Reuven's heirs. Mitzad sheni, if someone is going to collect this land, someone is going to collect the land, Reuven, the father, was meshabed himself. Exactly, that's what happened. Someone who loaned money to Reuven passed away. If Reuven passes away, he cannot collect it from the metaltalin, but he can collect it from the land. The land is not beyad Reuven, it doesn't matter. The land is beyad Shimon, doesn't matter. Reuven sold it to Shimon, so he's collecting it from Shimon. Now, let me explain something.
Shimon bought it from Reuven.
Huh?
Shimon bought it from Reuven.
I know that. That's why he can collect it from Shimon. But here's the word. Shimon wants that land. Shimon is going to go tell this creditor, you have the right to the land, but let me buy you out with money. You loan money. You're only collecting the land because Reuven is not here to pay you back. I'll pay you the money. Now, 1 second. If he pays him the money, can he deduct it from his loan? He owes money out. He didn't pay for it. The Yarshim of Reuven can still come. They can come and say, you owe money to our father. The choiv that Shimon has to Reuven, that debt is not a debt that goes over to the lender of Reuven, to the creditor of Reuven. Just because Shimon paid just because Shimon paid that debt, Shimon cannot claim, I owed your father money, I paid his debt, so let me deduct the money from what I owe. It doesn't work that way.
Also the creditor cannot come back to the land.
Yeah, of course the creditor. No. The creditor can come back to the land because if someone lent money to Reuven prior to Reuven selling his land, if it was a milva b'shtar, he has a lien on the land. If he has a lien on the land,
If he has a lien on the land, how come Reuven can sell it to Shimon?
That's the way it always works. If I owe many people money, which I do, I can sell my property. It's only if I default on the loan, then they collect it. I'm allowed to sell my land. So in other words, Shimon has to be careful. Shimon just wants the land. Shimon thought to himself, that's malabatim, I'm doing everything good. I owe money to Reuven's heirs. Reuven's heirs owe money. Let me make a wash. Don't do that. Shimon Pikeyach. What should he do? That's the way you should do it. He should give the land. How can he give the land? Because the lender to Reuven has a lien. Give him the land. Now hold on. This field was sold by Achrayis. The fact that he didn't pay it is a secondary thing. He owes the money. if Shimon bought something and the seller, Reuven, says, I'm a Kabbalah Achrayis, so when he gives the land, Shimon can now say, you're Chayiv Achrayis. He goes and collects the land back. Gewaldig. And there's a chiddush here. In other words, as long as he pays back with the karka, he now can collect the karka back. Now, when he collects the karka back, does he pay the money? I think he pays the money. He gives the land to the heirs. I got it. Okay, but he doesn't give money to the creditor. He doesn't give the land to the creditor. I want to say it like this. When you owe money, this is the chiddush here. If I owe money, remember the rule. I'm chayiv to pay with metaltalin. The only times I get to pay with karka, here's yakir, is if I don't have money. Here the Chachamim are giving him an advice. This is good for Shimon. It's only fair for Shimon. You owe money. To whom? To the heirs of Reuven. You owe money. Don't pay money. Pay them with the land.
Although I want the land, pay him.
But what's going to happen? You're paying with the land. What happens if you pay with the land? Who's going to take that land? No.
Yoshim.
But the creditor, because the creditor, when the creditor, now that the creditor takes the land, Reuven sold it to Shimon Bachrayis. He goes and collects the land back. And now, in other words, we're figuring out a system. Shimon is going to have to pay, guys. Make no mistake. Shimon is going to have to pay. What Shimon should not do is pay the money to the creditor. Don't do that. Shimon gives the land itself back to the Yorshei of Reuven. That's the Eitz HaTorah. It's for the benefit of Shimon. And there's a chiddush.
But they're not collecting. They're not coming to him to collect the land. It's the creditor that's coming. So the creditor shows up and says, "Hey, I want to take the land." He says, "Wait 1 second.
Wait a second.
Land back to the heirs."
Yes, that's what we're telling him to do. And there's two. In other words, there's two chidushim. First of all, he pays back his debt now. He tells him wait. And number two is, again, normally if I owe money, just to know the rule, I cannot pay back with land if I have money. Shimon, don't, even if you have money, don't pay back with money. Pay back with land. We want for Shimon to give back the land. We want for this to happen. Now the creditor will take the land, so it doesn't matter. Shimon now says, Reuven sold me karka b'achrayis. I want, the achrayis is back in the land. Shimon will not lose his claim on the land. The end will be that money will be given to the creditor. But Shimon will keep the land. It's only fear when someone buys land, they should end up keeping it. We're not saying Shimon won't get away without paying money for it. He has to know how to give it back, but often that he won't lose it. It's Kabbalah.
I don't understand something. When
he didn't have where to get the money from. Like a
get the money. Now find the money. Yeah.
Rabbi, when Shimon gives the land back to Reuven's Yarshim, right?
Yes.
So now, isn't he out of the picture? He got his money. He gave him the land back. His debt is wiped that he has with him. How does he still have the right to then go take it b'achrayas from the creditors that take it back from Reuven's Yarshim? I'm not understanding that part of the equation.
Because Reuven sold him the land b'achrayas.
But now I just voluntarily gave it back to the Yarshim and said, okay, my debt is wiped. Here's your land back. So now how do I end up getting it? How does Shimon get it back?
Because that's what achrayas means. Achrayas means is that Shimon really doesn't want to give up the land. He's just doing this not to lose it. I want the land. I want the land. I get to buy the land.
If Shimon went to the creditors that took the land back from the Yarshim and said, "Hey, let me just buy this off you for the amount that you were owed,"
he doesn't want to sell it.
So the Rambam is saying in this case, he actually could force them to
keep
sell
the land. He keeps the land. It's amazing. You have to understand. Reuven is chai b'achrayis to the sale, but Reuven's chai b'achrayis doesn't go on metaltalin, right? It only goes on karka. We're saying that this very land is lien for the achrayis. It just gives Shimon a right to the landlord. The truth is, the other guy came first. It doesn't matter. The end will be is Shimon will pay the money to the creditor. The creditor didn't buy karka. The creditor loaned money to Reuven. It's only fear that at the end of the day, the creditor should get his money back. Shimon, who bought the land, should keep the land. But this is the path you have to take for it to happen. Okay, right. Allah, you don't find Allah.
The whole.
Yes. Kulam. Now, even though we keep on mentioning that midin toida metaltalin is not meshubah to a loan, but they made a takana. Sheyil balchoid goive metaltalin min hayorshin. Not mitzvah yakir. Meshubah midrabanan. The kach donen Yisrael b'chol based in shubah oilam. Aval b'maydev hoyakoisvim b'shitrei choyvos. They wanted the same goal, but they felt that this takana is not strong enough. You have to put it in the document. You make it up. What do we write in the ksuba? We write that in our ksubas. So we're writing that the debt of the ksuba is amataltalin, but we're writing it into the document because we take a hold that if it wouldn't be written in, it's not enough that the goyim made a takana. The nimsa goyim l'chit Isaiah yosef Allah takana. This your God loss of a dover. Why is that important? Shema lo yoda haloive b'takana zu. If he doesn't know of this takana, if you're not going to document it, and since the goyim achronim said that you are allowed to collect it, if the loiva didn't know, then mama nimsa mama aisam yotzi like a din. So the Rambam is writing, it's better to have it documented. And once it's documented, then you're not even relying on the takon of the goyim achreinim. It's called Tanai Shema is going to be kind. And that's also a very big thing because the reason, just to know, the reason why the goyim achreinim made it, before Golos, Yidden owned land. Think about it. Even today, it's just a matter of time. When people go into a new country, the final Golos, people came to America, it's normal, maybe the first generation, they didn't own land. After a few generations, you end up buying land. When people own land, that's a different thing. When people are going into Golos, it became a phenomenon. Many Yidden don't own karka. And it's not fair. When people lend money, it's not fair for you to tell them that just because the guy passed away, you lost the money. There's a reason why it's meshubah to the karka. It just guarantees that everything should come back to the right place. So they said, if enough people don't own land, the chayv should go to the taltalin. And then the Rambam says, like the goyim, like the Poiskim in the West, documented, and we documented today that the chayv goes also to metaltalin. Okay, let's get moving. So this is late. I spoke too long. Perek Shnei Masar is now the unique limit of collecting any debts from minor orphans. So we spoke all about how if it's a documented loan, you can collect it from the Yarshim. Now we're going to go that Ksovim Ketanim are a completely different thing. Perek Shnei Masar has 11 halachas. We're going to get halacha out. Ein Ephraim and Yarshim guys. Elam Kein Hoy Gedolim. Everything we learned above. Aval Yarshim Ketanim. Ein Ephraim Ehem Shtar Choy. Now, are there exceptions? Yes. Another thing, we learned in the past chapter that sometimes even a milba al peh could be collected from the assignment because the karka is meshubat. Hold on. Wherever a milba al peh can be collected from the assignment, we don't differentiate between gedolim and katalim. That's a very important statement that the Magen Mishnah writes over here in the beginning. The Rambam is speaking about loans that can only be collected because they were documented. Here we say, fine, collect it, only from the adults. It could be that the guy paid back the money and there was a receipt. The Katanim don't know about it. You give them an opportunity. Doesn't help. Because Shema, there is a raya, and simply because they are minors, they don't know where to find it. They don't know where to look. Protection for them, for the minor orphans. You got a problem Because what do you mean, wait until they become adults? It's disadvantageous for the minor, for the orphans, because every month there's more ribis. Maybe it's good for them to pay it back. Now, maybe they don't owe it, but maybe they do. So here we say, even if needed, that's one exception, and you pay the debt back. Now, obviously, if there'll be a way later to find out that the guy took a shleika din, good luck in getting it back. But normally we say if there's a document, mistama the money is owed. We don't say, oh, the kids are minor, she can't get. No. Now, there are two reasons for it. Let me tell you how, that Rambam formulated this. This I remember from the Gemara. A little bit, there has to be an explanation. The main reason that the Rambam doesn't write here, he writes later, is because before a woman collects the ksuba money, by default, she has the right to live off the property of the state, the mezoinos, as she lived when she was alive. When a woman, an almana, is collecting her ksuba, it's good for the yisoyim. Pay the ksuba, and she's not going to be eating the monthly stipend. So here also, since it's advantageous for the yisoyim to pay it back, so mamidam apetropes, and then there's a secondary reason. That Rambam here, I don't know why he only begins, secondary reason is called cheno isha. We want this woman to be able to get remarried. A woman who has more property has more chen, more people are going to pursue her. That's the way of the world. If she's coming in with nothing, she'll have less. There'll be less cheno isha. But remember what I'm saying. The ikir is not cheno isha. The ikir is because if she doesn't collect her ksuba, every month the estate is giving her money. We even learned, even if she doesn't collect her ksuba, it's when she collects her ksuba or when she starts dating. These are the two times where she no longer gets mezainis. Lafikach, if she already got married, Kavividi says, oh, there's no cheno isha. She doesn't need that. Because that's the ikir. Once a woman gets married, she automatically doesn't have mezainis. And that's the main reason. Now, even the secondary reason, cheno isha, is to make her more attractive for potential suitors. She's already married. She was already attractive. Halacha dal. Hoyru mixas geoinin. Shemoyen achosim keneged bulvad. The ganze money. What are you telling me that what? It's better for the yisoyim for the collective ksuba. Why is it better? If the money of the ksuba is not like an Ashkenazi ksuba, it's a Sfardish ksuba. The ksuba, they announce it with pride under a chuppah, $100,000, $1 million, yeah? If the whole thing is $1 million, how is it good for the Yisraelim? Rather her take out 10 grand a month, rather than to her to take everything. If all of this property will go towards the ksuba, or it's not even enough for that, no, it's not just chen ha'isha. It's because it's good for the Yisraelim and it's good for her. But if it's not, there's no schus for the Yisraelim, you don't do that. In our case, if she's going to actually collect her ksuba, she's taking everything. So I cheno isha, the Rambam says, v'loi choshu lo cheno isha. Cheno isha is the Yehuda va'oid l'kra. Now, the irony is, and by the way, the Rambam is mirroring the Mishnah. Like, why does the Rambam write in Halacha Gimel chen isha? That's like secondary. It's self-understood. I don't know why the reason is. But here the Rambam makes it clear. Since it's good for the Yisraelim, cheno isha. If it's not an advantage for the Yisraelim, cheno isha is not enough to justify a debt being paid from Yisraelim Ketanim. Gavaldik. Halacha Siva ha moyidisha. Now, if the one who passed away prior to his passing says, to new manalaplaini, he's making that instruction, even though the minors, the Yisraelim are minors, he made that ask. Niskakin. And it's not so simple. You still have someone getting up there to make arguments on their behalf. That's even more. So the zoo, then you don't even have to set up an apitropos, because the guy was so clear that this is not ours. This belongs to someone else. Now what happens if we discover, based on the discovers, you have Yisraelim Ketanim, that there is land that does not belong to them. Eloto'an hatoyin, she goes liyad moedishon, also neskaken lahem. Umaminu apitru bezlit noveladu. And indeed, listen, if you find it to be gezula, machzin leis lebaleh. Oh, this rule is by a loan. If there's a taina that it's stolen, you can't ignore it. We're not saying that you give it to him. So you get someone that knows how to represent him well. They go to court, but if you lose, he's going to take the money out of the state of the minor orphans. A minor that had his servants, had his avodim, attack someone else's property. So what are you going to say? We know that it happened. You can imagine some minor Yisraelim, they go into your house. You can't say that the minor orphans, you can't go against them. No, Beis Din will give them a good lawyer, but let's not. Everyone knows that the Yisraelim took that property. When the father passed away, he didn't even have that property. The minor orphans took it. Then you can challenge them. The minor is saying it's mine. Let him bring Adam. You only ain't a skakin if he inherited it. It was already in the father's dominion. Halacha is zayin. I bought it. I bought it from the tate. Person is passing away. He wants to leave his kids with more money. He sells land. No one knows. The kids think it's their land. That's what's happening over here. The yeshloi edim, and this guy has edim shehechzik b'machal shnei chazak b'chayavim. Even that is not enough. Can you imagine? Even though he has 3 years. Ein mitzian oisam yadam achiyagdolo. She'ein mekabel edim shloim b'fnei baldin. V'hakotem kilen oimen kan chashu. But if he has a document, Avalin hoitzi shtash the kucha b'yadoi. Hitaka has to be mekayim the star. But then mitzian oisam yadam. Achar shemamidum apitropes. Halach eches. Kishen eskokin based l'nichse Yisraelim limkar. Now that we gave all these exceptions, sometimes the Yisraelim have to pay. And for them to pay, they don't have cash flow. So you have to sell the property. And then, again, like we spoke on in the previous chapter, sales are always known because people who sell land make their sale known. Don't sell off market unless you know what you're doing. Now, how do you make it on market? Either it should be announced every day for 30 days straight, or it should be announced 60 days, only Monday and Thursday, which is the day of the market. That's the same amount of advertisement. When these announcements are made, you have to clarify the borders of that which is being sold. And you also have to notify, this is important, when Beis Din is overseeing the sale of Nichsei Yisraelim, they have to notify why do they want to sell it. Why is that? I'll tell you why. When a person, think about it, if the Yisraelim, they're minors, so there's an apetropos. If property is being sold because there's a debt that has to be paid, just to know the way of the world, when someone is collecting a debt, they will even be makabel coinages that are a little bit not good. Which means that the guy that's buying the field might even agree to pay a higher price because he's getting rid of his bad coins. So it's important for them to know why. L'mashal, aksubas isha, lahagbois leisha. Just to know another, when a woman is collecting a debt, even from Nichsei Yisraelim, normally she'll be maskim to get out many payments. Generally, that's the way of the world. A lender wants all of the money up front. A woman, she's a widow, she needs to live off. So therefore, the buyer might agree to pay more money because he knows that the Beis Din will accept, I'll pay it out in 10 years. No, it's knowing why it's being sold ultimately is to the benefit of the Yisraelim. Halacha 9. Kishakoisvin ha-aderachta. No, guys, a aderachta is a document, it's a core document that gives let's say the toyin gives the plaintiff the right to expropriate the property belonging to a debtor. That's the way the system works. In other words, whenever there's a chayv, and the guy, for whatever reason, is not paying, and Beis Din gets involved, and they realize that this will have to be collected from land, there's a seder. The first thing that happens is Beis Din writes a shtar aderachta, and they give it to this person, to the plaintiff. That already documents that he will have the right to take property. When such a thing is written, al nichse yisoimim, ben gedolim, ben ketanim, you have to write on it, you have to write it on it that this aderachta that's written against the Yisraelim is because of a debt that the father owed. Now, guys, we're going to learn a lot about this in Perek Chav Beis. There's a seder. At some point, the plaintiff gets to move into that land and eat the user fruit. If the aderachta halachically is not kosher, the money is owed. It just means that this right won't be. You cannot use this right. The document is not a good document. Halachically, Beis Din when Beis Din is selling land of Yisraelim, if they won't follow the proper procedure, this is such a great mistake. And these are the laws, guys, that we have in Hilchos Sanhedrin. How do we deal with a Beis Din that makes a mistake? The rule is that if they make a mistake with the halacha that everyone knows, I don't care how great the Sanhedrin is, their ruling is nullified. Selling land without announcing it, which will be to the disadvantage of Yisraelim, is such a mistake that it's completely bottled. The sale will be null and void. Once the sale is made, the achrayus will be on the Yisraelim. There is an achrayus. There was a buyer. Once a guy buys it, you can imagine. I buy land from the Yisraelim. Then it's discovered later that this land was liened. The Yisraelim will have to pay. They don't say they never sold it. Once you follow the procedure, at least there's a chiyuv achrayus on the nichse of the Yisraelim. Final halacha yud aleph in this chapter. Ubeis Din shechrizu karo and ubatku yafa and the digdu bashuma. Afapi sheto machru shavam manam b'masayim. If I don't know how this happened, but if they followed the procedure, they did everything right. It turned out to be now this is good for the Yisraelim. Something was sold for double, or even the opposite. The Rambam is coming to this, or something that was worth masayim was sold b'manam. We don't say that it's null and void. That's not a tov b'dvar mishnah. That was that the Beis Din hired people to make an evaluation. They were looking all to do the right advantage. If a mistake happened, since the Beis Din did it, harei michram kayom. Number one, or v'leikosvu geres b'koides.
Be professional.
You have to be. They didn't follow. There's a notice of evaluation. That's everyone should come and evaluate it. These are all the steps. Shehi digdu kashom v'achraza. Or v'tov v'yisiru shtos or b'chaso shtos. Now it's amazing, guys. If you remember, by dinei oina, the only time there's a possibility for mekach batal is if the mistake was more than a shtos. We learned by oina that if it's only a shtos, the money has to be returned. Not over here. Less than a shtos, we still allow for the concept of mechila. But if the mistake was of a sixth, we're more makbid on a Beis Din because they were doing something to the menachasam of Yisraelim. Michram batal. Only if pachos mishtos michram kayim. So here there's a chumrah that we have on the Beis Din. As we'll learn in a moment. There are times, guys, that let's say the money is needed for burial. Let's remember one rule. They're not selling a lot. The guy left no money, but no one is going to bury him. So because of that, they are allowed to make some of the property into money, and they don't have to make achrozes. When they did it, in such a sale, the toh even here, if they made a mistake, and even if they made a hachraza, only when pachos mishtus do we say michram kayam, but michram kayam only when the taket did not have to make the hachraza, like in this case. Because we're speaking about the case ain't tzricha hachraza b'oisra eitz. The Rambam writes, "V'zuhi or eisha ain't tzricha hachraza." When do you have such a mitzias that the Beis Din doesn't have to make these big advertisements these notices, which is always to the advantage of the seller of real estate, like we mentioned, or 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 to give taxes to the king. Because some of these kings, if they don't get the taxes right away, there were rules, other people can pay, and then they were meshabed them. It's good for the Yisraelim for it to be paid. Because it's a davar nachos. It's a pressing matter. Atkan was land. Now let's speak about selling devarim. Sometimes they get to sell the metal for him. We say, I don't care that they were allowed to sell it pressed. Once Beis Din makes a mistake, b'shtus, between me and you, not Beis Din on for orphans. A shtus is tolerated. Notice we don't say mekach batel. The money has to be returned. Here we say michram batel. Only pachas mishtus michram kayim. Now, what can be the dvarim she'em achrizim alel? Avadim, shtaris, amatalflin. Why is that? Avadim, whenever it comes to the point that what will be sold is avadim, you don't make achrazah. Why? Because Sham Yishmael v'Yivrechu. When avadim hear they're being sold, there's a danger. They got used to this master. They don't know who the new master is going to be. Vashtaris, amatalflin. We are afraid that once people know it's on the market, prior to it being sold, no one knows that you have it. Now it's known, so you don't make announcements. You have to make a shuma. However, there's only one exception, that if the shuk, which normally you get more money in a shuk, is close to where you are, at least take it to the shuk. You don't need achrazas. There's the balance. But beyond that, certain items, it's to the advantage of the Yisraelim for there not to have achrazas. Still, Beis Din cannot make a mistake even of a shtus, and if they made a mistake of a shtus, nichram batel, gewaldig.